Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Planning Advisory Committee for the town of Quispamsis for Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. Item number 2, approval of agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the current agenda? Mark?
So move.
Brent? Okay. Can we vote on that, please? Motion carried. Move on to item 3, disclosures of interest. None being. Move on to item 4, approval of previous minutes. Is there any adjustment to the minutes? None being. We take a motion to approve, please. Brenda?
So moved.
Seconder?
I'll second.
Kendall? Thank you. Have a vote on that, please. Motion carried unanimously. With that, we'll move on to item 5, business arising from minutes. We have a motion to receive and file, please.
So moved.
Brent? Mark? You second that, Mark?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. With that in place, can we take? Motion carried unanimously. With that being, we'll move on to item 6, unfinished business. None being, we'll move on to new business. Item 7A. An application to permit the construction of a detached garage where the corner of the garage is proposed to be located 1 meter beyond the front line of the main dwelling. Could the applicant please come up to the podium and state their name? And while that's happening, Jennifer, can you introduce the item, please? Okay, John, we're going to let Jennifer introduce the item, then if you have any questions, we'll ask you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The location is 412 Hampton Road, 1,886 square.
To the side of the house, so we thought providing the garage on a bit of an angle to the property and to the property line would give a much better curb appeal to the house and the property as a whole. And we're maintaining the roof line, the sight lines on the front of the house, matching the gables and all that type of stuff. Excuse me. And hoping that the minor variances are indeed minor and don't cause any other complications.
All right, thank you. Any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? Brenda?
A comment and then a quick question. My comment is I've driven by that many times and I always look and say, that would look so nice with a garage. Anyway, I'm wondering, are you able to match your siding or?
Only in the latch drake size of 4.5 inches. What we decided to do, it was so difficult to match the color. And
Yeah.
after 15 years, that yellow siding has obviously
Yeah.
done the ravages of the sun. So we've actually gone to a willow green, which should complement the yellow and sort of blend into the wooded area at the side yard there. So we're hoping that the change in the color will be complementary and not be too much of a contrast.
And your house is built on a slab, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. I was in there when it being built one time.
Yeah,
Just
it's a lovely
noticing.
home, and we were quite fortunate to find it.
All right, thanks.
Is there any other questions from PAC members for the applicant? None being, is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time. Is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions? Mark?
Mr. Chairman, Planning Advisory Committee, make a motion to approve, just a second here, the 1 meter variance section 8G1BI to permit the development of a detached garage where the front corner of the garage is proposed to be located beyond the front line of the main dwelling, and approve a 0.6 meters variance to section 8G1BIII of zoning bylaw number 038 to permit the detached garage to be located 2.4 meters from the main dwelling at 412 Hampton Road, PID number 302094998. It should be subject to the following terms and condition. 1, the detached garage shall not be used for the purpose of a business or a dwelling unit or for the keeping of livestock. Number 2, the exterior finish of the garage is to be cladding recognized by the National Building Code of Canada, current adopted edition.
The motion's carried unanimously. The next 5 to 7 business days, you have a letter in the mail with your approval. And best of luck. Please work with the town to have all necessary permits and documentation in place. And best of luck on your new garage. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Jennifer, do you want to say something or no? Okay. Next item, item 7B, an application requesting approval to erect a fence on the property of 8 Branch Crescent, PID 302358999, such that it connects to the fence on the adjacent property. Could the applicant please come up and state their name, please? And Jennifer, can you introduce that item? Tom Dimmers? Mr. Dimmers, so Jennifer, can you introduce that item, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this is to allow the development of a fence to cross over the property line and attach to the neighboring fence at 50 Grafton, and also a variance to allow, to allow the already existing accessory structure to remain there. And it does need to have a 70 centimeter variance, side yards variance for that to happen. As I said, we will recommend as staff that the portions of the fence that will be constructed that will attach the fence at 8 Branch to the 50 Grafton, we would recommend that that be built in such a way that it could easily be dismantled if for whatever reason, the property owners have changed ownership or their minds, it would be an easy solution. The reason for a 60-centimeter setback for a fence is to allow there to be enough room to do proper maintenance of the fence without actually going onto someone else's property. So that's just something for PAC to keep in mind. We did send out notices to neighboring properties, and we didn't receive anything. We did receive a letter of support from 50 Grafton saying that they are in agreement with this, and but staff have no other concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Mr. Dimmers, you would have received the same package we did in the mail. Is there anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to members of PAC or the public asking you some questions? Oh, go ahead, sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
The fence is in support of a pool installation, and the permit is pending for that. And
Okay.
other than that, I agree with the recommendations in the staff report.
All right, thank you. Any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? None, I guess I'll have one question. So I'm assuming that the neighbors in agreement for the fence crossing over on their property, they're okay with all that? They've agreed? Yes. Okay, now is that in writing or verbal? You have it in writing? Okay, perfect. All right, any questions, further questions from members of PAC? Dwight?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just a point of clarification with respect to the zoning bylaw and the issuing of the permit and variances. So in this particular case, a section of fence is actually crossing over onto an adjoining property of 50 Grafton, which means PAC in essence is granting a 0-centimeter setback for a portion that would go up to 8, and they're also granting a 0-meter setback for that portion from 50 over. So that would have to be recognized through this process. That portion that crosses over and adjoins to the fence that's on 50, that small section would actually be a variance that would run with 50 Grafton Drive. So it wouldn't actually be, because in this particular case, if you're associating everything with 8, it's up to the property line and then another 2 feet beyond that, which is on somebody else's property. So in essence, that section is on 50, and that section would have to be brought in compliance by granting a setback variance for 50 Grafton, so it can get registered with the property moving forward.
Just gotta make sure that's in the motion, I guess, the recommendations?
Yeah, so that would be in the notice of decision if PAC were to move forward with it and approve it.
Thanks, Dwight. Any questions from PAC members? None being, oops, Brent?
Mr. Chairman, to with what you've just commented on, should the motions brought forward should be, in that motion should be included that the residents of 8 branch are responsible for the portion of the fence that crosses onto 50 Grafton. It's their responsibility to maintain it.
So through you, Mr. Chair, that's something that would be with the property owners. PAC don't get into the actual who's responsible for the maintenance back and forth. We're looking at it specifically from a zoning bylaw and zoning law regulations and compliance.
Thanks, Dwight. Any further questions from PAC? None being, is anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Member of PAC want to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions? Brent?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman. Make the motion, the Planning Advisory Committee approve the setback variance of 0.6 meters from zoning bylaw 038, section 6S7 to allow eight branch crescent to connect their fence to an existing fence of 50 Grafton, and approval of a 0.7 meter setback variance to section 8 G2B3 of zoning bylaw number 0 through 8 for the location of the accessory building subject to the following terms and conditions. 1, lot lines are clearly delineated prior to the installation of the fence. The sections of the fence to be erected within the setback should be constructed so that these sections can be removed without difficulty should either property change ownership and property lines are disputed. 3, the accessory building will not be used for a business purpose or for the keeping of livestock or as a dwelling unit. 4, fence permit is to be issued prior to the construction of the fence. And 5, it's to be recognized that the fence from 8 branch crescent will be extended into 50 Grafton. I guess, does that address the concern?
Dwight?
So through you, Mr. Chair, so it would be that portion of fence that is on 50 Grafton Drive would be, receive a 0.6 centimeter or a 0.6 meter setback. So it can actually go to the property line.
Thanks, Dwight. You got that in there, Violet? Thank you. Can I have a seconder on that? Oh, sorry, Dwight, missed you.
And just one additional comment. So it's important to note that moving forward, if there were issues with that small section of fence on 50 Grafton and it became in a state of disrepair, from a town perspective, we would be notifying the property owner of 50 Grafton because from our perspective, that portion of property is on that property, so the property owner is responsible. So whether there's some other agreement between those two property owners in terms of who's responsible to maintain it, our notification and communication would be with the property owner of 50 because that's where that section of fence resides.
Duly noted, thank you. Can I have a seconder on that, please? Kendall?
I'll second it.
Any debate on the motion? Oops, hang on, Kendall, go ahead.
Sorry. Could the applicant describe the fence being constructed?
It's gonna be wood, but the area that crosses over to the property line is gonna be a one-piece chain link fence.
Okay.
It's gonna be easily disconnected if required and wouldn't involve the maintenance that a wooden fence would. So,
All right.
if that answers your question.
You okay with that, Kendall? Yes. Thank you.
So my other question,
Brent?
So my other question, Mr. Chairman, is more for Violet. Have we noted what Dwight has commented about the ownership and maintenance and all that in the minutes? So if it does come back, that it's all documented?
Yeah, that the maintenance of the portion of fence on the other properties, any notification, the town will be sent to that property owner. Yeah. Oh, hang on, Kendall, go ahead.
Sorry, too quick. Question for staff. Does a letter get sent to 50 Grafton just advising them of that? Or
I'll create
Oh.
a notice of decision,
okay.
Okay,
proper documentation.
thank you. Any further debate? And meeting, can we take a vote, please? Paperwork and documentation in place and work with your neighbor to keep them informed of what's happening with the fence. Thank you. Move on to item 7C, an application to permit the construction of a detached garage prior to the main dwelling unit at 210 Model Farm Road, PID 002300789. Could the applicant please state their name for the record?
I'm Glenn Foote.
Glenn, we're going to get Jennifer to introduce the topic, then we'll ask if you have any questions after. Jennifer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The location is 210 Model Farm Road. It is located in rural zoning, and the lot has 4,176 square meters. The applicant is proposing to construct a detached garage prior to the completion of a proposed main dwelling. They're moving from St. John to Quispamsis and would like to be able to use the garage as storage as the home is being finished. So it does require a variance to 8G4, which requires that the main dwelling be constructed prior to the erection of an accessory building. We've received one letter of support, and that's in your package. Staff have no concerns with this application, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Foundations.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Both foundations are being installed at the same time
Okay,
for the home and for the garage. the detached
perfect.
garage.
Anything else you'd like to add prior to some questions from PAC?
Just new to Quispamsis. The people I've been dealing with have been excellent, so I just wanted to highlight that here.
Well, thank you.
It's been a good experience so far.
Awesome. Any PAC members have any questions for the applicant? Brent?
Mr. Foote, just inquiring what the timeline is for your build.
So the timeline is to begin right away. The excavation's already been done for the residents. It started for the garage, just pending, it's on hold now pending the approval of the permit. I'm building it myself, so I put a year timeline on the permit. I'm hoping to be able to complete the garage within about 6 months within about 6 weeks, with the exception of the outside siding. I want to do the siding on the residence and the garage at the same time, so I make sure I get the same materials. The home, I'm hoping to be in by Christmas, but it could be as late as May of next year.
Thank you, Mr. Foote. Any other questions for the applicant from PAC members? None being, is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to put forward the motion that the Planning Advisory Committee approve the request to allow the detached garage to be placed on the subject lot prior to the construction of the main dwelling at 210 Model Farm Road, PID 002300789. And it should be subject to the following terms and conditions. Number 1, the detached garage shall not be used for the purpose of a business or as a dwelling unit or for the keeping of livestock. Number 2, the existing finish of the garage is to be a cladding recognized by the National Building Code of Canada, current adopted edition. And number 3, a building permit be obtained prior to construction.
Thank you, Mark. Can I have a seconder on that? Kendall?
I'll second.
On any questions on any debate on the motion? Brenda?
No, I'm just gonna,
All right, can we have a vote, please? Motion's carried unanimously. Congratulations. In the next 5 to 7 business days, you have a letter in the mail, Mr. Foote, with your approval, so please work with the town to have all necessary documentation in place, and best of luck.
I thank you very much.
You're welcome. Going to move on to item 7D, an application requesting approval for the construction of a single dwelling unit on a lot bordering a waterfront to be constructed below the center grade of the abutting right-of-way and requiring a side yard variance at 23 Motivation Avenue, PID 303-42521. Could the applicant please state their name for the record, please? Mark. We're going to have Jennifer introduce the item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The lot is located in rural zoning with a lot size of 5,930 square meters. A single-family dwelling is a permitted use, although it does need permission from PAC. It's being developed on a waterfront. It's below the center line of the road, so it does require foundation elevation variance, and it is being sited in such a way that it will only have, it will require a 12.7 meter side yard setback, where in the rural, they require a 30 meter side yard setback. So that is what the applicant is requesting. We did send out letters to neighboring properties, and we did not receive any concerns from the neighboring properties, and staff have no concerns.
Thank you, Jennifer. Mr. Hatfield, you would have received the same package we did in the mail. Is there anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to PAC members or members of the public asking you a few questions? Okay, perfect. Any members of PAC have any questions for Mr. Hatfield? None being, is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Mr. Goslin?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Make a motion, Planning Advisory Committee approve the 0.6 meter foundation elevation variance to section 6F1 of the zoning bylaw 038, a 12 meter variance to section 25F3 of zoning bylaw 038 for a side yard setback, and to support construction of the waterfront lot as per section 6BB1A of the zoning bylaw 038 for 23 Motivation Avenue, PID number 303-42521, subject to the following terms and conditions. A site drainage plan to be submitted and accepted by the town prior to the issuance of a building permit. A letter from the Department of Environment be received by the town indicating that there are no requirement for a watercourse or wetland alteration permit for the proposed waterfront development prior to the release of the building permit. The preparation of a hold harmless agreement be executed prior to the approval of the final inspection of the dwelling, and a building permit is issued prior to the construction.
Thank you, Mr. Goslin. Can I have a seconder on that? Brent?
I'll second that.
Any debate on the motion? None being, can we take a vote for that, please? Motion carried unanimously. Mr. Hatfield, in 5 to Going to move on to item 7E. Request to amend the zoning bylaw number 38, rezoning of PID 251462, 160 Pettingill Road from single or two dwelling R1 to multi-residential R2, mixed residential use development. Could the applicant please come up and state their name for the record? And while that, we'll state your name for the record, please. Mr. Dunn, we're going to have Dwight introduce that item for us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this has come through PAC by way of the town clerk as the item is before council as a rezoning. In accordance with the Community Planning Act, any rezoning or zoning bylaw amendment requires the written views of PAC as part of the process. The public hearing for this particular item is scheduled for June the 21st. While there is still a couple weeks or more before we hit the public hearing, there is a timeline in terms of the response of PAC, which is 30 days from receipt of the request from the clerk's office. So that's why it's on tonight's agenda, because PA council doesn't meet again before the 21st of June. So that means any request of council, any request of PAC for an extension to the timeline would not be heard prior to June 21st. So this particular application is looking to rezone the land at 160 Pettingill Road from R1 to R2 to accommodate a mixed-use residential development, which would see 4 12-unit buildings, so 48 units from a low-rise apartment-style building, and then approximately anywhere from 14, probably to 16 semi-detached units, which would be in sort of the purple area, if you will, on the site map. And then in the orange area, you're looking at potentially single family. Access to this particular item is from the Pettingill Road. It will be a public street that would come in and then connect with the future street, which has been reserved. I guess the name has been Windsor Boulevard in the Heritage Estate subdivision. So there would be a public connection there with a private lane scenario servicing the 48 units, the 4 12-unit buildings, and then a public street servicing up into the semi-detached area. The first plan is to, my understanding is to build the 48 units, so the 4 12 units, and then move outward from there. Again, Mr. Dunn, if there's been changes since then, he can allude or advise PAC accordingly. Obviously, the development will require a number of studies, which are indicated in my staff report. So there'd obviously be a traffic study, given the number of units being proposed, and it coming off of Collector Street with a busy intersection at Southwood, and just you got the schools in the areas and churches and those types of things. So there would be a traffic study to determine what impacts that would have on the potential intersection in that area, with any recommendations for any changes or requirements to upgrade to accommodate access. It would require not just a comprehensive hydrogeological study, but also require an EIA, whereas the waterworks has the potential for the 48 units to draw more than 50 cubic meters from the ground within 24-hour period. So any waterworks that have the potential to draw that amount of water requires an environmental impact assessment, as well as it would look at the impacts on the environment in terms of stormwater management and those types of things as well. It would be serviced with town sewage. The service line to service this particular property was installed with the Ritchie Lake capital upgrade a number of years ago, where the main sewer line runs underneath the QR trail. So it would be serviced by municipal sewer. It's based on what's being proposed in terms of the impacts on the adjoining properties. It would be reasonable to believe that the level of impacts that the low-rise building would have on the adjacent single-family residential properties on Heritage would be minimal because of the setback, as well as there's a strip of land that's owned currently by the town. It's a small strip of land that runs from the QR trail up towards the adjoining properties, right where the cursor is, right there. It's town-owned land, so that acts as a buffer. And then the remaining land that would go up, if you could just go back to the go on the staff report, if you just go back up. So the area that's shown in green would actually become land for public purposes. So there's going to be an area buffer between the buildings and the low rise and the single family. And then the other areas obviously would be actually permitted under the current zoning. So under R1, you can have semi-detached housing and you can have single family. So those setbacks would be what you would see particularly under an R1 zone. So there's still obviously a level of design that's required when it comes to the stormwater management. The location of the stormwater pond, all those types of things would obviously have to go through additional engineered design, which at this stage have not been done. And it's not something that we don't typically see through this process, as developers want to ensure that the change in land use is approved before making significant financial investments into conducting these studies, especially when you get into an EIA and you get into comprehensive stormwater modeling for this particular area, and as well as traffic study. So any approval would be subject to those reports being done prior to final approvals, and that's mentioned in my staff report. PAC would probably be familiar with this land, as it has come before PAC on a couple of other occasions as a single family residential development under Fox Ridge, Fox Ridge Estates, I think it is. It's still under Queen construction. So at this particular time, Mr. Dunn has a conditional offer in moving forward with this particular type of development, and if it gets passed, then obviously it would move forward. So I think at this stage that gives PAC the information they would have to give comments or considerations to it. Council is looking for PAC's written views with respect to the proposed land use, whether the PAC feels it's first of all fitting with the land, with the area, if it's keeping with the intent of the municipal plan, and then any other concerns that PAC may have that they would like to bring forward to council, and then ultimately if they support the proposed use or if they have concerns that would have PAC not supported. So, but again, that would have to be clearly stated in any comments back to council. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Dwight. Mr. Dunn, you would have received the same package we did in mail. Is there anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to some questions from members of PAC or the public? Okay, thank you. Any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? Brenda?
A lot of it is concerns. I'm getting very concerned about the number of units going into that stretch of the property on that Pettingill Road. Not only but the number of wells that has to be developed, because that's more than was going to go in with that single family units. I'm concerned about that because I've lived in that area 45 years, and eventually you feel that there's going to be no water, or the town has to supply water. And that's what people have been asking me. If this development puts our wells dry in this area, who's going to pay for it? And I guess we have to pay for it ourselves type of thing. And that's starting to concern people. When you see these multiple units going in, it's getting a little scary. The other thing too, when I walk up the Pettingill and look at Southwood and up the hill, the site distance, I know They do their traffic study based on the speed limit. But nobody drives 50 kilometers an hour on the Pettingill Road. If you think they do, go to 50 kilometers and see the line of cars you hold back. I would say 60 to 70 is the speed limit on that road. So these are the things. Also, the concern where you have the retention pond next to the trail. That's going to have to be quite a few trees come down to make a retention pond. And I guess that's my trail that I walk. And I've had difficulties with the development Mackay builders. So that's going to be something that you have to keep a very close eye on, because the Department of Environment had to come in and attack them. That's not going to happen. It should not anyway. So those things, plus the other support portion, is not really, it's to future development. It could be potentially the same thing in the yellow, because that's not part of the plan, is it? It could be more units once it's zoned.
I don't believe there could be any more units.
You don't believe you're going to do it?
I could be wrong. I don't think we're allowed to put any more units after, if this was approved. Maybe I'm wrong.
White?
Yeah, go ahead. Make me feel better.
So through you, Mr. Chair, so this is going to become council has a package, and this is what's going through the process. So this particular development would get attached to the development agreement and say this is what council's agreed to. So if there's any changes where the developer comes back and says, well, I've changed my mind, I don't want to do semi-detached, or I don't want to do single detached, I want to put in more apartments, he has to come back to the process, right? So any changes to this particular rezoning application, because it's subject to a Section 59 agreement, the plan as it's being proposed is what council is agreeing to, is what the public were made aware of, and the public addressed their concerns on. So it's not a matter of, oh, I changed my mind and now I want to put in apartment buildings, and we just internally look at that. Once you go through a public hearing process and approve a particular development, any changes to that is subject to a public hearing, council input, and under the same level of review as the initial application. The other thing with this one is because the application goes for an EIA, the EIA looks at what is your application being submitted. So if there's changes to that particular application subsequent to the fact of an EIA, then it would actually have to go back to an EIA process again, because you're changing what was originally reviewed at the provincial level. What is being proposed, and I failed to mention in terms of the water, it's going to be potentially a single well, so it's sort of like a communal water system. So you're sinking a single well and a house and a house to distribute to those particular units, and that's why the EIA is there, which means you have to demonstrate there's sufficient water of quantity. Yeah, so I understand you're still drawing from the ground, which is the nature of all water services in Quispam. We are a groundwater-based community. We're not pulling it from Kennebecasis River or a lake or a pond. Everything comes from the ground. So.
And a few dry years would probably have some difficulty. That's my concern. And plus the traffic, I think we're going to end up with some traffic lights on the Pettingill.
That'll come out in the study though, right?
No, it's not part of the study, but the traffic study should. My concern is the visibility when you look from Southwood up the hill. Cars coming down that hill, if even you're driving the 50 kilometers and they see them, and the cars are slamming on their brakes because they want to cut out in the traffic. And this one, they could be straight across. But same as the other one, across from Kensington. That's going to be Cross Street. It's harder to get out of Maple Grove Court.
But that's the purpose of the traffic study, right? To
Yeah,
determine whether
I'm
they
hoping.
need. Then that'll determine. Dwight, you can answer that question. Hang on.
Yeah, so this particular study would be reflective of what is being conducted for the Ritchie Lake Terrace further down the Pettingill Road. So it's just not a line of sight access stopping distance. It's actually a full-fledged study of the intersection that looks at not just the build out of this particular development, but then it adds any particular development of vacant land beyond this, which reasonably is they usually use about a 2% over per year to sort of give them a baseline. But you're also looking at level of service of the intersection. So we'll actually set up cameras or monitor the time it takes to turn right, turn left, all the turn movements at that particular intersection. And based on the time, it gives a level of service. So the level of service is ranked from A to F. And once you get down into, the D, E, F level, that may warrant traffic lights, or it may warrant some sort of actuated control of the traffic, right? So that's what that study is going to do. It's not going to look at just stopping distance or line of sight. It's looking, once that gets developed, what is the level of service of that entire intersection? And that's the same, that's what's being conducted at Ritchie Lake. It's the same level, because you're looking at Kensington, you're looking at the schools, you're looking at all those types of things. So the same level would be applied in this particular case as well.
Thanks, Dwight.
Those are my concerns.
Thanks, Brenda. Any other questions for the applicant from PAC? Kendall?
Maybe staff or the applicant could just describe, so in orange, those are single-family homes? And in the yellow highlighted area, are those duplexes or are those the rental units?
They're rental units, low-rise rental units.
And purple, those are just
Semi-detached.
semi-detached, okay.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I guess the
Oh.
piece that I kind of struggle with is the rental units, not the semi-detached, all the garden homes, all that type of thing. I think those are really good. Just the design seems a little, with the rental units, something doesn't seem appropriate to me, but I guess that's just a point of view.
Yep, they're designed on the slope of the hill, so it would look like you have 6 garden homes on one side, and you drive around to the other, you'd have 6 garden homes on the bottom level. So everyone would walk into their door without steps. If that makes it any easier to visualize.
That's due to the slope of the land, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Any further questions for the applicant? Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like, any particular reason why rental homes in that area as opposed to ownership, like the garden home or some other style?
There's a huge demand for rental properties in Quispamsis, and there's not a whole lot of land that I can find.
And one, like those streets around there are all privately owned around the rental
yeah.
units. Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. Any further questions for the applicant? None being, I guess tonight we're asked by council to make some recommendations for council. We're not making a decision on we approve that layout or not, but somewhat we are. So I guess in saying that, we talked about the traffic study, and that's some of the notes we should take care of. That's a full comprehensive study. It's not an abbreviated traffic study. So it's going to take everything into consideration, as I guess my understanding is Dwight talked about. There is an environmental impact assessment study that's being done, which going to take into consideration anything around that area. Geotech, CN Rail's got to approve it. Anyway, there's all kinds of those conditions are listed there. So We're just providing some information back to council so that they'll have enough information to make a decision whether they rezone that from R2 to multi-residential. To 4, yeah, mixed residential use. Anyway, with that being, member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions? Brent?
Mr. Chairman, I'll put a motion forward, but just before I do that, just read an article today in Moncton actually just passed something similar to this in the North End. It's probably one of the fastest growing neighborhoods in the province. They just did a multi-faceted development like this. So this is kind of, I guess, the way things are going with the mixed use development to maximize your density into small spaces, so.
Yep, for sure.
I make the motion, the PAC, with review with regards to the development to town council, that 1, full comprehensive traffic study for the Southwood Drive, Pettingill Road, and future access to the proposed development. 2, completion of an environmental impact assessment prior to final development and permitting approvals from the town. 3, an engineer designed stormwater management plan and drainage system stamped by a registered professional engineer licensed to practice in the province of New Brunswick is to be completed and submitted for each phase of the development. 4, a geotechnical report regarding slope stabilization for that portion of the development along the QR trail. 5, the proposed development should be forwarded to the CN Railway for review and comment as it relates to development near their rail infrastructure. 6, a site design showing the creation of the buffering zone as relates to the neighboring residential R1 zones must be approved by the town prior to construction. 7, the development must include pedestrian trail connection to the QR trail. I'm just going to add to that and possibly discussions with the French school and link into their property also, as they have a trail system. 8, street lighting installation at the entrance to the development should be installed. 9, all building lights be downward directed. 10, developers enter into a development agreement with the town of Quispamsis. The developer shall undertake to complete the work for each approved phase within a period of 2 years following approval, and the development schedule is to be included in the development agreement. 12, the land should be developed in accordance with the most recently dated building and development plans filed with and approved by the town for each phase. And 13, if the development does not substantially proceed within 6 months of date of approval for each phase, the developer should restore lands to an attractive natural state, and such restoration is completed within 60 days.
Thank you, Brent. Can I have a seconder on that? Mark?
I'll second that.
Any debate on that motion? Can we vote, please? That motion was carried unanimously, Mr. Dunn. In 5 to 7 business days, you may have a letter in the mail